And it is my pleasure to introduce our next guest. He works for one of the top business schools in the world, one of the most international business schools in the world, Mr. Andrew Bueno, who's Assistant Director of Marketing for the MBA program at INSEAD. And Andrew has worked for INSEAD for over 7 years in a variety of roles in Fontainebleau, France. So he really, I'm sure, will have a lot to share about the university and the MBA program. So welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thank you, Darren. It's a pleasure to be here.
Andrew, could you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and your role at INSEAD?
Yeah, I moved to France about 10 years ago. So studied in France during university and got a job at INSEAD, as you mentioned, almost 8 years ago. And I'm responsible for recruiting MBA students in Europe, Central Asia, Israel, and part-time in the Middle East. So covering quite a lot of regions.
So, Andrew, what makes the INSEAD MBA unique?
INSEAD MBA program is unique because we deliver an accelerated 10-month MBA program to an international student body that covers over 80 nationalities. Now, this diversity of the student body is exceptional here at INSEAD because there is no dominant culture. And so it obviously makes for a very rich learning experience. Now, a unique thing about INSEAD is that the program is offered fully across our 2 integrated campuses in Europe and Asia. And we have recently added an option for students to study on our Middle East campus. So students have the chance to spend time on 3 different continents during the program. And another key feature about the program is that students will work globally after graduation. So presently, students are going into over 60 different countries and taking advantage of our alumni network, which is about 40,000 strong in 160 countries.
Wow. And do INSEAD MBA students have the opportunity to do exchanges in such a short program?
Yeah, we do. So we have 2 exchanges with U.S. schools. One of them is Wharton. The other one is at Kellogg. And we have a recent exchange that has just been added. Very happy to be starting that off this fall with CEIBS in China.
And is that very hard for students to exchange to these programs?
It's not difficult. What we ask the students to do is to write up a 1-page kind of motivational letter or kind of essay as to why they want to exchange to the partner institution. And there are a limited amount of seats. So for Wharton, we send 35 students per class. For Kellogg, 10 students per class. And as CEIBS exchange is only available to the January intake, we're sending 20 students per year there. So seats are limited, but if you really want to participate in one of the U.S. exchanges, it's quite most likely able to make it happen.
Yeah, and I can understand why, even though those are some great exchange options, obviously some of the top names in the world, that people would want to stay at INSEAD because, it is such a unique learning environment. As you mentioned, 10 months, and the cohort is quite big, right?
It is.
You have 2 intakes each year, correct?
That is correct.
So the cohort size is roughly around 400 to 500?
500 students per intake, yeah. Twice per year. One starts in January and the other one starts in September.
There must be so many opportunities for your students during this 10-month program. I mean, you're packing in a lot of classes, of course, and you have 500 super ambitious people there in the program from all over the world. So how do you think students make the most out of that experience? How can they make the most out of that experience?
Well, we start off quite at a small level. So I know when you're looking at a program this large with 1,000 students, you're probably wondering, how do students get to meet each other? How do they get to create friendships and professional relationships with each other on such a large program? When students join INSEAD, we divide them into small groups of 5 to 6 individuals, different nationalities, different work backgrounds, educational backgrounds, and we try to ensure a gender mix within the group. The students will then spend the first 4 months of their program, which is all of the core courses, with those 5 to 6 individuals. We then place those 5 to 6 individuals into sections of 80 students. So those 80 students will be taking their core courses together. So when you think about it, the program is large, that there are 500 students. However, about 300 of them will be starting in France, 200 of them in Singapore, and then they're further divided into sections and then further into groups. So as you get more and more comfortable with the program and being here on one of our campuses, you will obviously first get to know your group really well, and then your section, and then you start moving outside of your section.
I see. Okay. And are there any new exciting developments this year with the INSEAD MBA?
Yeah, the first one is the Abu Dhabi module. So some of you may be familiar with our Abu Dhabi campus. It's been in existence for many years now, just a bit over 6 years actually. And we had just opened up an exchange there, kind of a module for the September class, which allows them to go for 3 very short trips in January, February, and March to work with local companies on consulting projects, and the whole module ends with a Middle East kind of Gulf-based career fair there. So that's something new that's being offered to the September class. And as I mentioned earlier, a new exchange opportunity for the January class is our partner institution, SEABS. So we're very pleased to have that, and really happy that about 20 students will be going per year over to China to attend classes at SEABS, and that SEABS students will be coming here to France or to Singapore to take classes with us.
Wow. So aside from, being able to study in Singapore, France, maybe the US, maybe Shanghai, why should candidates, get their MBA in Singapore or France? As you know, the MBA is it's a life experience as well as an academic experience. So yeah, I'd like to get your thoughts there.
Well, we feel that it's a very enriching experience. So when students are considering MBA programs, oftentimes, obviously, they're gonna be considering the U.S. as a top option. European MBAs or Europe-based MBAs and Asian-based MBAs are also very, very strong and are, I would say, equal competition with our US counterparts. What INSEAD does is it brings together the European and the Asian experience into one. So when you're choosing INSEAD, about 70% of our students now spend time on both of our campuses. We actually encourage them to exchange back and forth to get a flavor for life, business, and career opportunities in 2 very different parts of the world. In addition to that, then they get to spend some time in the US or possibly the Middle East. So the INSEAD MBA experience allows them to have that dual campus global structure, which a lot of other business schools don't offer.
So you spend the first 5 months in one campus and then you move on? How does that work?
So you actually, on your application, you'll check a box which is called Preferred Campus Choice. And that Preferred Campus Choice means that you will spend the first 4 months of your program, so 2 periods, 2 of the 5 periods, on that starting campus. And then as of period 3, you'll be able to exchange to the other campus. And then 4 and 5, you'll be able to exchange to the partner institutions. So you would spend essentially the first 4 months, let's say, in France, and then from there you can move to Singapore or start in Singapore and move to France.
Got it. Crystal clear. If we can talk a bit more about your admissions process, could you help us sort of demystify INSEAD's admissions process in terms of what happens to an application once it's received and until when you return a decision to the applicant?
Yeah, it's a very good question. People often wonder, they hit submit on the application and then it kind of goes virtually off to the campus, but they then don't really know what happens once it arrives. The application process to INSEAD is quite detailed. We have a very precise process which your application as a candidate will follow. When it first arrives to the campus, after you've hit the submit button, it will be processed by our admissions team in terms of, pulling it out, putting it together, bringing in other elements of your application like your letters of recommendation, your GMAT, TOEFL, language requirements, and so forth, putting that all together with your transcripts. Then the application is fully read by an individual, so it's what we call the first reading. And then there's an evaluation that is done and a summary sheet that is put together. Then this application moves on to a pre-selection committee. So this is where the application is evaluated. We look back through all the content that was submitted, and we decide whether this application will go on to interview or not. So at that point, there is a yes or a no for the candidate. Hopefully it's a yes. Then from there, it moves on to interview stage. All interviews at INSEAD are conducted by INSEAD alumni. We're lucky to have almost 3,000 interviewers around the world who do interview our candidates out of the goodness of their heart. They don't get paid for it, and they do it as a way of giving back to the school. So they play a very important role in the admissions process, are the alumni interviews. There's normally 2 of them that are conducted. Then the alumni interview gives their feedback to the admissions team. There's a second reading that is done then of the application, taking into consideration the alumni interview report. And then it moves on to the admissions committee. Now, the admissions committee at INSEAD is solely composed of faculty and alumni. It's a bit different than other business schools where maybe staff members have voting possibilities or are allowed to influence the way decisions are made in an admissions committee. At INSEAD, only individuals that either deliver the program, so the faculty, or individuals that have completed the program, the alumni, can vote on the applications. Then they make their decisions one by one, and then we get to call the candidate and let them know whether they've been admitted or not. So the entire process takes about 12 to 14 weeks. It may seem a bit long, but it's actually we're just hoping to match or mirror the time and effort put in by the candidate into a very thorough admissions process.
Got it. Okay. And do candidates have a better chance if they apply in rounds 1 or 2 versus rounds 3?
No, they actually don't. So at INSEAD, we try and ensure that roughly the same amount of candidates are accepted in each application round. It's quite different to other business schools, but this really helps to ensure that the chances of getting in are equal across all rounds. So when you're looking at applying to INSEAD and you're comparing round 1 versus round 2 or 3, really apply when you're ready. That's the key message that we try to tell our candidates is don't get caught up on the rounds. The rounds are there to guide you and to provide you with deadlines, but don't force yourself or rush to apply earlier if your application is not ready.
For the GMAT, I know you mentioned on your website that you're looking to get, you encourage candidates to score in the 70 to 75 percentile or above, preferably. If candidates don't quite meet that mark, what would you suggest they do?
Well, INSEAD does not have an official minimum score, as you mentioned. We've accepted everything from 600 to 790. Now, this being said, 80% of the class applied with a score that fell between 650 and 750. So it obviously makes sense that when you're applying, you should really submit a score that's within that safe zone, you could call it. However, applicants should aim for scores in the 70 to 75th percentile on both sections of the test. But it's also important to keep in mind that we do welcome applicants to submit several scores. So if retaking the test is necessary, that's okay. At INSEAD, we do not do an average or combine all the scores together, or we do not take the most recent score that was submitted. We take the highest score. So if an applicant has to take the GMAT 2 or 3 times, it's okay. You may not succeed on your first time. Don't lose, hope. Take it a second time or a third time if necessary and get the score that you're looking for.
And you have traveled extensively around Europe and the Middle East and Central Asia, as you said, promoting the program. Could you leave us with some tips on how candidates could improve their chances for admission?
The first tip or suggestion would be get to know the school, get to know the program, and get to know the alumni network. I insist on these 3 points because your fit with the program is what's going to have an effect on your chances of getting into the program. Oftentimes when candidates are considering business school, they're applying to top schools because that's what they were recommended to do, because that's what rankings suggested that they should do, or maybe because they have friends or colleagues or family members that attended a specific MBA program in a certain country. At INSEAD, we really believe that it's the fit with the school that's most important. And the more you know about the school, the better you know the school, the better you know the program and the alumni network, the better your chances of getting in will be. The second aspect that you should consider is ensuring that your application is 100% complete, ensuring that it's interesting, dynamic, and that no information is missing. When you're submitting an application to INSEAD, you have to bear in mind that you're sharing a piece of yourself, a bit of your life. It could be a story. It could be almost like a painting of who you are. And INSEAD is then going to evaluate and ask questions about that. So make sure that the application is interesting, that it is dynamic, and that you are covering all aspects of your life. The last point, it kind of brings us back to the first one, is really being convinced that you fit with the school that you're applying to. So once you've gotten to know the school and the program and the network, then try and look at yourself and saying, where do I see myself studying? Where do I belong? And of which alumni network do I one day want to be part of, knowing that you only do one MBA and it is a big investment and you will be part of that network for the rest of your life. So really making sure that you fit with the program that you're applying to.
So school, application, and fit. Those are the three things you suggest applicants to really consider.
Yes. In a nutshell, yes, the school, making sure the application is good and dynamic, and then the fit with the program.
Great. If we could talk about financing, what percentage of your class gets scholarships and what are your average scholarship amounts?
So this year, INSEAD awarded 2.9 million euros in scholarship funds. These scholarship funds went out to 21% of the class, and the average amount that's awarded is about 12,600 euros. Now, it's important to keep in mind that 50% of these scholarships went to female candidates. We're doing this obviously to increase the gender diversity on our program.
How do they apply for scholarships? Do they first have to get into the program and then apply for scholarships, or could they win a scholarship by just applying to INSEAD?
So scholarships at INSEAD are awarded only after the student has applied, the candidate has applied, and they're either awarded after the interview round or after being admitted to the program, depending on which round you apply in. And the scholarships at INSEAD are awarded on the basis of merit, of need, profile and professional experience, nationality, and as I mentioned earlier, gender. So we encourage all applicants who have financial need to thoroughly consult our website and apply for scholarships for which they have a fit.
Yes, and I think your website does an excellent job of letting candidates select, where they're from, which country they're from, and seeing, which scholarships are available. So I'll definitely link to that in the show notes. And in terms of loans, I know that Prodigy Finance was started by some INSEAD alumni.
Yep.
But can international international students who are not French or say Singaporean get loans in those countries, student loans?
Yes, absolutely. So INSEAD works very closely with Prodigy Finance. As you mentioned, it's an organization that was founded by 3 INSEAD alumni, and it was a pioneer in community-based student finance. So what it did is it brought together alumni and institutional investors in order to fund international students to top business schools. So it started off with INSEAD, and then there has actually moved on to other top business schools around the world. So yes, it doesn't really, within reason, matter which country you are from. The full list of countries are available directly on their website. There are some exceptions, but students coming from Asia, Southeast Asia, you would be able to apply for a Prodigy Finance loan. And actually this year, Prodigy Finance granted 172 student loans for an average amount of 37,000 euros. So it's quite a significant chunk of our student body.
And that's just to INSEAD students?
That is just to INSEAD students.
Wow. Okay, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so it is a very big number. Yeah, we also encourage students to look at other funding options within their country, sometimes by talking to alumni, doing internet research, consulting our website. You will sometimes find or hear about the existence of government loan programs, in-country kind of personal bank loans. And so definitely encourage all applicants when they're applying for loans to talk to other students who have done the program, who share their same nationality, and to see if they had any in-country either scholarships or loans that might have been available to them.
Great, yeah, and a great place to start again is the INSEAD website. But that's hopefully a service I would like to provide to my listeners to help them out, to help them find information resources to finance their MBA education. So hopefully I can get to that in the future. But if we can now shift the focus to career, INSEAD, it's a 10-month MBA. As we've been talking about, it's super intense. So for MBA candidates who want to switch industries or functions, what can you tell these candidates who are concerned about finding that that new job, making that jump in their career after a 10-month MBA program?
Well, I'd tell them not to be worried. So, first of all, I think it's important to look back a little bit in INSEAD's history. I think when you're looking at top business schools, you may not quite know how long they've been around for. It's important to highlight that INSEAD is the oldest MBA program outside of the US. So, we have been around for 50 years. And since we opened up our campus doors here in 1957, we have always offered the 10-month MBA format. I think it's important to highlight that so that you realize that there is a lot of history and a lot of experience behind that, and that the 10-month format is not something that's quite recent and then would therefore have an effect on your career opportunities and employment opportunities after the program. It's important to keep in mind that INSEAD has an excellent reputation with employers worldwide, and what employers appreciate about INSEAD graduates is that they're very diverse, they have a global professional experience, and have highly developed business skills. So it is possible in 10 months to make some change, make some significant amount of change, depending on the person, change their function, their sector, their geographic location, in only 10 months.
Yeah, and actually, on that note, that reminds me of your language requirement. I think INSEAD is one of the few, if not maybe the only MBA program that requires candidates to be competent in 3 languages by the time they graduate. Can you talk a little bit more about that language requirement?
Yeah, so INSEAD's language requirement goes as follows. You're required to have English plus a second language in order to apply to the program. And you need to have basic knowledge of a third language by the time you graduate from the program. Now, people should not look at this language requirement or this language policy as something a hurdle or something that's difficult to get across, because when you look at most people today, aside from maybe some coming from maybe large English-speaking countries, people tend to speak 2-3 languages already, and so what we're looking at here is saying you have fluent English. Your English is either proven by a language exam like a TOEFL or a TOEIC, or you have a university degree that was solely taught in English. That's quite straightforward. And then other people have a mother tongue. So we can put, let's say, French, for example. People have maybe, let's say, French as a mother tongue. And then everyone else would need to have a third language to graduate from the program. Now, why do we have this? Well, several reasons. The first one is really to bring onto our program candidates that have an international outlook, candidates that value international mobility, which obviously languages goes with. And it also shows employers that students are able to learn quickly and do something different in order to get into a program. So a lot of our candidates have to learn a third language from scratch in order to graduate. The message that it gives out to employers then is that this candidate, if they have to, expatriate them to another country for 2 or 3 months, will make an effort to learn maybe some of the basic, business phrases or the basic words needed for working and living in that country, and that they won't see it as too big of a challenge.
Got it. And so do you actually require a test for that second language?
We do require a test. So if English is your mother tongue, then you need to prove the second language by the start of the program. So that would, shortly before the start of the program. So if you're starting the program in September, it needs to be proven by June. And if you're starting the program in January, it needs to be proven by the previous November. So that's if your mother tongue is English and you need some extra time to learn your second language. However, for the majority of our students, English is not their mother tongue, so therefore their mother tongue is not tested. So if you speak, Mandarin, if you speak Spanish, if you speak Norwegian, or let's say German, then that's your mother tongue. It's not tested. And then your English is proven by a language exam, and that's quite straightforward. You have the scores, minimum scores required, available on our website, and then you would submit that score with your application.
That's such a unique requirement. Thanks for clarifying that. And so if we could turn, back to what you were mentioning about INSEAD's extensive network worldwide, because, it has a long history in Europe and all over the world. How accessible are the alumni of INSEAD? Because I know you have this super international and sizable alumni base, but, are they quite responsive to students who ask them for advice or help? How does that work?
They actually are very responsive. The INSEAD Alumni Network I mean, it's unique, and I think it's unique for several reasons. The program that they experienced was so intense, was so life changing that for the rest of their life, whether they've graduated 3 years out, 5 years out, or 10 years out, they have a very strong connection, professional connection, but it also emotional connection to the school. So that when you talk to an INSEAD alum and you mention INSEAD, and there could be 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, 30 years separating the two individuals, but they have an immediate connection. They have an immediate connection to the school, to the program, to the way it was delivered, and then to the network. So yes, our alumni are very responsive, and they're also very well connected to each other. In terms of advice for candidates contacting alumni, I think it's like with anything. When you're writing an alumnus, when you write them, make sure they understand why you've chosen them to contact. And with your questions, make sure that the questions are not more than 3, and that the questions are very short and very precise. Everyone is very busy nowadays, and as you can imagine, alumni who graduated 5, 10, 15, 20 years out, even more so. And people want to be able to look at an email, understand that it's a connection with INSEAD, understand what the questions are, answer them quickly, and hit send. So this is not the time to ask alumni to review your application, review your CV, ask for advice or coaching. It's really connecting with them because of where they're working, their nationality, or where they may be based.
Great. And for those students who, choose to study in Singapore or France, how long do they have to be in these countries under their student visas?
So the two countries differ, as you can imagine. Before I get on to the topic, though, of visas and how they work, I think it's important to highlight that INSEAD students, when they graduate, go off and work in over 60 countries around the world. And this is regardless of the nationalities and passports that they hold. Now, obviously, it may be harder for certain nationalities to get jobs in certain countries, but when you are looking at the top multinationals, the large consulting companies, the large banks, consumer good companies and so forth, they have very strong ties with the school and within their country and have very large members of staff based there. So it's quite easy usually for them to work out and sponsor the visas for the candidate they're wanting to hire. This may not be true for people maybe targeting smaller businesses, startups, family businesses, and so forth. So I think it's important to highlight that regardless of your nationality, that when recruiters are looking at you, they're looking at you based on your experience and based on the fact that you're an INSEAD graduate, and not so much in the first part as to which passport you happen to hold. If they really want to hire you, normally they'll work that out later in the process. This being said, in Singapore, so if the students spend a certain amount of time on the Singapore campus, they can then apply for a long stay visit pass, which allows them to stay in Singapore for up to 1 year after the end of the program. This is quite unique to Singapore. So if you spend a certain amount of time on the Singapore campus, you can then apply for this long stay visit pass. With France, though, it really depends on which visa you came in on, and students can extend, the student visa can only be extended if the long-term student visa they obtain does not cover the entire duration of the program. So sometimes what ends up happening is that students will apply, if they're coming to study in France, they'll apply for a student visa, but it might be for a shorter length of the program, let's say 6 months or 8 months, and then they have to apply for a second one. Sometimes the second one will, surpass the end of the program by 2 or 3 months, which will then allow the candidate to stay in country that much longer. Otherwise, there's not a similar system as there is with Singapore. But obviously, this is not guaranteed, and I'd say in either sense. It's obviously done on a case-by-case basis, but both options are available.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. I actually worked for 6 years in Singapore, and they're very nimble in terms of adjusting their different types of visas, depending on how many foreigners are studying and working in the country. So yeah, I understand how that can change year to year. What is the best way for potential applicants to INSEAD to actually contact students or alumni and get that firsthand account of what the program's like?
So the best way to contact current students is to attend our on-campus events. I think that is probably the fastest way to do it. We organize Friday visits. We organize in-house events once a month. We organize events on campus on a regular basis, and we also organize individual campus visits. This ties into what I was mentioning earlier about your fit with the school and how important it is to get to know the school well. A campus visit could be part of that discovery and learning process. And when our visitors come onto campus, they are able to then, if classes are available, attend a class, meet with some students, possibly have lunch with them, grab a coffee with them, and then obtain their contact details. If you're not able to visit the campus, then you can contact us directly, and we can try and put you in touch with maybe a student who shares the same nationality background as you or as the candidate. With regards to alumni, the fastest way is by attending our off-campus events. They are very busy individuals, and as I mentioned earlier, there are 40,000 of them around the world. But because we have such strong contact with our alumni, they do attend our events that we organize in major cities around the world and participate in panels. And they're always very willing to help candidates through the process and share their contact information. But likewise, if you're not able to meet with us off campus at one of our events, you can reach out to us and we can connect you with some alumni, either working in your sector or in your country.
Yeah, I think that, talking to participants is like the best way to get, a feel for the school. And of course, aside from visiting the campus, if possible. And you mentioned some tips for when INSEAD students contact INSEAD alumni, how they should do it. How would you recommend INSEAD MBA applicants to, get in touch with, students and alumni? Like, would you have any recommendations there?
I mean, similarly to what I mentioned before, I think it's just important when you're contacting students or alumni to introduce yourself, to explain very briefly how you got their contact information or where you obtained it from, and then from there proceed, directly into why you're contacting them. What questions do you have for them? If it's alumni, are they working in a specific sector or company or country? If it's students, are they based on a campus? Are they part of a specific intake, maybe the January intake or the September intake? You let them understand very quickly why you're reaching out to them, and then what do you want to know? I think INSEAD students and alumni are always happy to share their experiences. They're always happy to share why they chose the INSEAD MBA program, but like with most things nowadays, people like to get to the point. So this is not the time for any long-winded or explanatory emails with CVs attached and so forth. And I think it's also important to highlight that nowadays with things like LinkedIn and Facebook, people probably have an INSEAD alumnus in their personal or professional network. Sometimes you just need to do a little bit of digging and searching, and you can actually find someone who might only be 1 or 2 degrees of separation from you, which might be easier to contact than picking somebody randomly and out of the blue. We also encourage students to connect with the school via our social media. It's another great way to not only learn about the program, but also connect with students and alumni. Because we have a blog called the MBA Experience blog. We have a Facebook page, a Twitter account. It's also a nice way to kind of in a maybe more passive way hear about our students and hear from them, hear about their experiences in real time.
It's great advice. So yeah, definitely look to contact students through the social networks as well, perhaps, but be very cognizant about valuing their time and asking specific questions about the program. So Andrew, is when you present the INSEAD program and recruit all around the world, is there anything else about the INSEAD MBA that you just wish more people knew about?
Candidates should know that INSEAD's MBA program will be a very intense experience, that it will be a transformational experience, but that it will also be a lot of fun. I think when you're looking at MBA programs, you're about to embark on a journey that's going to take you through, the next 10 months up to 2 or more years of your life. You're going to be investing a significant amount of money into this experience, and you're going to be part of that alumni network that you've chosen for the rest of your life. At INSEAD, one of our slogans here on campus, or one of the mottos is work hard, play hard, go far.
Go far. That's a new one.
Go far. Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
we feel that it's important to enjoy the program, to obviously spend a lot of time learning, networking, developing yourself intellectually, professionally, but also to enjoy the program and to take advantage of being part of such an international and diverse community, and then make those connections that you will be able to then use once you graduated from the program and are based in various cities and countries around the world.
Yeah, I saw on your website, I was looking at the student life part of your website, and there's the Dash and the Robin Hood campaign and the monsoon and summer balls where your students are really dressing up and looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's important to keep in mind that the program is going to be very challenging academically. It's going to be very challenging from a career point of view, but it is also going to be very fun, and that the students are really taking advantage of being here together. To, as you said, put together national weeks, parties, sporting events, professional clubs, and social clubs, and to enjoy getting to know each other.
Great. And Andrew, MBA candidates are often asked, what three words would your friends or family use to describe you? Well, if you could just leave us with three words that you would use to describe the INSEAD MBA program.
Intense, collaborative, and international.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you, Andrew, so much for being on the show.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much